Hello, everyone. This is John Browning at the Building Your Life podcast. We have another exciting episode for you today. And we have a guest with us, Jennifer Edwards, who does some pretty interesting things. And we have had a recent podcast episode. Go back and check that out that deals with some of these issues on a little bit different level. But Jennifer, you hit the idea of finance, wealth management, this tool that we call money in a bit of a different way. And I think it's really important that people understand that. Now, nobody can introduce you better than you. So I will ask you, as I do everyone, what is it that you do and why do you do it?
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. I'm so happy to share this with your audience. What I try to do is help people be successful with money, yes, tackle the internal struggles and identity that we usually experience around money to get to more of that clarity and confidence. And sometimes it's just calm. I mean, you work with people, high net worth individuals, and you can see that even millions of dollars doesn't, necessarily lead them to having a life of peace, or there might even be increased anxiety around money. And that's something that I'm trying to help people overcome that, so that they can really interact with money in the way that is in alignment with their highest priorities and goals, where they can use it as a tool to, reach those things that are most important to them. We all say family and health and all those things are important to us, but sometimes we just chase money for the sake of chasing money instead of letting it be the thing that helps us chase the life that we really dream of. So, working on those money issues from the inside out. And because I'm both a certified financial planner and a certified financial therapist, it's more about the why we do things with money before we tackle how to be successful with it. And then that makes it so that the success will last. So that, if we're tackling a debt problem or an investing issue, that we don't cycle back into old patterns. So, my background is with families. I love trying to strengthen families, couples, trying to help individuals get ready for those lifetime partnerships by understanding their financial issues. And I've been doing this now for more than a decade, helping hundreds of individuals. I'm over 600 individuals and couples. I'm really trying to help them get to that point where money is not the thing that divides us. And with money still being one of the number one citations, so the prevalence and the intensity of money fights is still the number one predictor of divorce. I want to oust that from its place and be like, let's first of all realize that we're not fighting about money. So it's really, something else deeper that's going on. But money is such a symbol for so many other parts about us that feel vulnerable, that feel scared, that we don't want to share, that that become difficult, makes it difficult to relate. So I really want to help families be close and successful and not have money be the thing that divides us.
Yeah, I think well, that's the reason that I wrote the book, Build a Life, Not a Portfolio. And that's the
Mhm.
reason that we're named the Building Your Life podcast, is because I spent a lot of time on Wall Street, decades on Wall Street. And you run into, I'd say, more than the average number of people who are miserable rich people.
Yeah.
And my
Oh,
goal is
that's
to
so
create
sad.
happy rich people.
Yeah.
I don't think we should shy away from having a lot of money, a lot of resources that we can use then as a tool to further the things that are important to us, the things
Mm,
that are in here. Because
yeah.
ultimately, and there's a chapter in the Build a Life, Not a Portfolio book that deals with how we make decisions, and we make our decisions emotionally from here rather than here, even though most of us, especially the guys, would like to believe that we make every decision very logically. It's just not
Right.
true. There's been
Right.
lots of studies that will reiterate that and reinforce that idea.
Nobel Prize winning research. I mean, this stuff is well documented. At least 95% of our financial decisions are made. We could say emotionally, or we could say automatically and subconsciously. So these come from those belief systems that we actually formed in our childhood that unless we have, explored them and vetted them and decided what beliefs and what stories and narratives we actually want to keep in our financial life, they're going to follow us all the way, through our entire experience with money through our adulthood. So, yeah, I'm all about let's bring that to our conscious awareness and then decide like how do we really want to interact with money so that it can lead us to have stronger relationships, better mental health, better physical health, and then also, I think, better society. So when we can release a lot of those feelings that we have around our identity being wrapped up in how wealthy we are, we can start to have money be more of something that passes through us instead of just ends at us, like it just kind of comes to us and then we just hoard it for a long time because we don't feel safe no matter how much we have. And then when we can cycle that back in through society, then I think we're going to solve a lot of our social ills.
Yeah, I like that idea. It's because I do run into a lot of people who they have a fair amount of wealth that they've accumulated. And of course, you have both sides of this, right? You have some people that no matter how much money that they have, they seem to be able to spend it over their means. And then you have the other side of that coin, and this happens with a lot of what I call good old fashioned, hardworking Americans that have put in the time. They've got the bump, scrape, scars to prove it. And they
Right.
are so afraid to now, when they're in their golden years, right? Their golden years. I'm doing air quotes for those of you listening and not on YouTube. And because they're so afraid to spend it, they don't use it in a way that brings them joy. And I've had all sorts of different
Yeah.
people with different ideas that get joy from very different things. It could be anything. It depends on the person and what is it that you want to use your tool that you have
Yeah.
amassed for that would bring you joy.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
bet you've
I
got
have a
stories.
yeah, oh, so many. And the difficult thing about this is that as a society, we label the wealth building part as being successful with money, instead of like your book would be saying building the life that you want is being successful with money. And there's some other books that have helped us see something more along the lines of like, what it would mean to thrive or what prosperity means, that it's not just amassing a huge amount of money, but it is in aligning our life's purpose with the what we can do with that money to all of the good that you can do with it, all of the ways that you can build your family life. And there's just so much wrapped up in that, money, because we know that money is power. Sometimes it's dividing our families because
Right.
there's a power dynamic in there that is leading people to feel like there's this hierarchy between them instead of, hey, just because I don't have as much or I don't make as much, maybe I'm not as worthy. So yeah, I would love to have that be healed so that we can relate on a really deep level and open up our hearts to each other in a meaningful way.
Yeah, tell us, like, I am sure you do have stories. I mean, without saying any names, obviously, or anything like that. What's like a good example of a way that you've kind of helped come into a situation and it could be success story if you want, or it could be
Mhm.
something that you, wow, I wish that would have gone differently, but maybe explain to people exactly how you help.
Yeah, so when it comes to like a family might decide, so sometimes it's a person about my age, so I'm in my 50s, and their parents are extremely wealthy and they're going to they're expecting to get an inheritance, but parents are keeping it a secret. They're
Mm.
not telling them what it is. They're afraid that the children might then decide, like, to focus on, oh, the shorter amount of time that my parents are around, the sooner I'm going to get this money. Maybe they feel vulnerable going into old age, saying, what if my children decide to kind of bump me off, like not take care of me very well, right? So that I can have there's literal fears around that. And so the secrecy is really keeping people from being able to be close in a time of life when the greatest thing about that part of our lives is the wisdom and the lessons that we can pass down. And so there needs to be open communication and there needs to be trust in order for that wisdom to impact children and grandchildren and maybe even great grandchildren. So what we do is we'd sit down with the children, whoever it is that's saying they have the problem. We talk first around, like, okay, how is this affecting you? And then what I'm really big on when it comes to changing a relationship dynamic, working first on yourself and how you're showing up in that relationship, because you probably have, especially in these high net worth families where maybe there was a lot of energy devoted to a business or building wealth in some kind that has led to a feeling of abandonment or neglect in the family members where that was occurring. So we work on that for a while and they understand. So I teach all about trauma and I teach all about stories. I have a trauma of money training, psychology training, and we go, okay, this is probably what was actually going on for your parents. Maybe we don't know the full story. Maybe we're speculating, but you can kind of get, like, if they grew up poor, like what this could mean to them and how they are defining love in this way because it was lacking in their home growing up, perhaps. So we really get to a place of empathizing with the people that are hurting us.
Mm.
And that can take a little while, but it's so worth it when you start to come to a relationship going, I get you. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to trust your judgment all the time, or I'm going to, always do what you ask me to do. But to come with that understanding of, like, I get what's going on for you, or what could be going on for you, and that we're all kind of dealing with these childhood wounds, these unmet needs. And when we look at people that way, it can really help us see that, we're all struggling with the same kinds of things, and stop putting people at what I call the opposite of the boxing ring. Like, we all come into this center and we can actually have some healing to go on. So we start first with your issues because, if you're showing up defensively to that relationship, then it's going to take too much. You're going to continue to hurt each other. So, I say take a step back, let's not try to change the way that you're interacting until we deal with those kinds of issues. And then we go from a place of gratitude. So we work on gratitude letters. Sometimes we send them, sometimes we just keep them to ourselves, but we really start to go from, okay, because you're probably kind of enmeshed with this idea of, like, a victimhood type of a feeling, or, something has gone wrong with you, which is why you're showing up and you're coming to me in the first place, is you're saying, I'm so messed up. I've had 3 divorces. I've got all these, maybe my own addictions are showing up because of how, my parents, sometimes it's the father, it has, especially father and daughter. There's so much that goes on for a woman's identity in the way that her father treated her. And so when we can come to a place of gratitude and go, oh, I see that you were trying to do the best that you could, that this was the way that you were trying to express love to me, then we can come to the conversation. Then we actually start to broach, like, how would we broach these conversations, inviting them into a conversation with a mediator. So we'll actually say, this is what you're going to say. And sometimes it's a written thing so that the person doesn't feel on the spot to answer it right away. They can think about it. You can send them a physical letter. That usually works out best, is if there's a letter in the mail, which means this is a big deal. This is bigger than email. This is bigger than text. This is like something that I thought about, that I wrote in my own handwriting, that I've been contemplating for a long time. So it warrants some reflection on the part of the receiver. And then the receiver can then, you can say, I'd like to invite you to a conversation with an expert I've been working with to help us both kind of feel safe and know that there's not going to be the same dynamics that we've already been doing. That they'll be there to interrupt that process if we've been fighting, or if you've been avoiding the conversation because you're afraid of the fight. Then that also, you can say in the letter, I've been needing to talk to you about some things that have been building up, and I don't want this end of your life to look this way, where I don't feel like I can talk to you about these things. And there's this whole format that we follow in the letter about acknowledging all of the good things, and then acknowledging the things, that ways that we've contributed to the relationship not maybe being as healthy as it could be, expressing the work that you're doing, and that you're doing that work because you value the relationship so much. So it tells them how important that they are, and how important they are to them. And then oftentimes they'll accept that invitation, and they'll come into, sometimes they'll call them and they'll say, let's just have a conversation. We don't need to get the third person involved. And we have rules around that. We say this is a boundary that we set, because we know how easy it is to descend into those defensive patterns, when there's not kind of a third party there that's not emotionally charged. Because we're talking decades of interactions that have
Right.
probably pent up over time and been unhealthy. So then we can have the conversation. We can say, so grateful that you were willing to show up, and how much bravery and courage it takes to come into this space. And your child or your parent or whoever it is wants this relationship to succeed and wants it to be close. And that's why we're engaging in this. Are you welcome? Are you okay with engaging in this process? And usually by then, the ground has been set for a healthy interaction. And so then we can start to see progress. And I've seen family members, just cry and hug, and, just there's literal stress response release in the act of crying. And people who are just like, I just never knew that this affected you this way. I'm so glad that you were able to tell me about it. And then the relationship can look very different. Mom, dad, I'm scared about what this money means. I'm not even sure that I want this inheritance. I don't even know the number that we're talking about. Can we, and oftentimes they're working with a financial planner, and that planner is aware of the work that we're doing. And so then they can say, hey, there could be some changes to the plan based on what we come up with here. Um, and now that it's going to come from a place where both parties are willing, and they're interacting in a way that they're saying, yeah, this is what we actually want to see happen.
Yeah, I think there's so much that I picked up on as you were talking. One being that often there's assumptions that were
Kinds
made
of
along the way,
assumptions.
never talked about,
Hmm.
but just assumptions that were made. I mean, used to be and still is to a great degree, I think, a stigma of we don't talk about money at the
Oh, for
kitchen
sure.
table.
It's still
And
totally taboo. Yeah.
right. And that can get in the way, and just simply not knowing, because one member, whichever way it goes, whether it's mom dad or brother sister or son daughter, has never felt comfortable bringing it up, but they've been thinking about it, stewing about it, and as you stew about it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and grows into something that maybe it never was.
That's
And it's
exactly that imagery you're talking about, where it's growing bigger and bigger. It's growing between them.
right.
Right? It's causing distance and distance. People are going to start to pull back because it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable. They're feeling very vulnerable and unsafe. And so then they start to pull away and distance themselves from that relationship, which is just where it breaks my heart, because I don't want money to do that. right? Money shouldn't be the thing that does that. It should be the thing that allows for all kinds of experiences together. And how can we maybe, collaborate in a way that we can be philanthropic with this money and bring, your values and ideas into this? Because I recognize the sacrifice that you maybe as a child made in helping me build this wealth. Some of the baseball games I missed and the plays I didn't go to or the concerts or whatever because I was traveling or I had this late meeting and stuff. And so you were part of that wealth building process. And so let's bring you in the conversation about how would you like to see this disseminated to the world? And again, bringing us closer together through that process. It's so much better that way,
Hmm.
to see that happen.
And many times, let me just speak really quickly to because I think this is just not always. I don't want to stereotype anything, but if I could just speak to the men out there for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
because often, not always, sometimes it's the mom, maybe it's the matriarch, but often it's the patriarch of the family that
Yep.
I made this money and I'm
That's the
so
dynamic I see.
mistrustful of everything and everyone because something happened to me in the past that made me that way, maybe quite legitimately so. Sometimes we as men can be very staunch in our beliefs and we forget that yes, we do have experience that the kids don't have, but guess what, they're not 5 anymore.
Mhm.
They're smart because we raised them well. They've learned things that we haven't learned because they've had different experiences that we didn't have.
Yeah.
And what those kids really want, I'm just going to say it because I know it is true. What they really want is to be acknowledged by mom, be acknowledged by dad as having value. And
Mm-hmm.
they need for the dad or the mom
Mm-hmm.
to really take and listen to their opinions and their experiences that are very legitimate.
Yeah.
We spent 18 plus years, and frankly, it never ends, right? I have 6 kids, and we're still, going bantering back and forth. We spend all this time
No.
trying to get them to think on their own and be on their own. And then we suddenly tend to push them away when it comes to things like the family money, the family
Yeah.
wealth. And it could be anything. Maybe all you have to give your kids is maybe your house, or maybe
Sure.
you have 30, 40, $50 million. I mean, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter the size, the relationship and the life that you build together is what really matters. That's what we're talking about here. Am I right?
Right, exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about. And if you recognize that money is keeping you from having the relationship that you want, most often your financial advisor, I know, John, you're doing this work intentionally, and obviously your podcast speaks to the fact that you recognize this emotional component to money, and so you're integrating it into your practice. But for a lot of CFPs, they don't feel comfortable venturing into this space. And remember, as a society, we've really kind of decided and together and defined success as having a lot of money instead of maybe what we really think, which is having great friends, having close relationships, having a lot of people who trust you, having a lot of trust in others, feeling secure, being able to give in ways that brings you joy, um, letting go of unimportant things and focusing on the things that are important. That all takes effort, especially in a society like ours that doesn't naturally encourage that.
And I'll tell you, it's some of the most fun that you can have. I'll just give this as something that you might want to try if you've got a little bit of wealth and you've been blessed. This idea of going to a restaurant and you see somebody working really really
Mm-hmm.
hard, wrap up a ridiculous tip in somewhere where they're not going to see it right away, and and just leave the restaurant. And if you have the opportunity, sit in the car and watch through the window when they get this oh my gosh, there's $300, there's $500 here, and
Mm-hmm.
that changes
Mm-hmm.
their life. It's
Yeah.
probably more than they made in their shift,
Yeah.
and things like that. The kind of joy that they can bring to you as a family, and have the family participate in that, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
stories your kids will be able to tell and learn from that, and how you can impact other people because you have amassed this wealth that you can now use to make
Yeah.
somebody happy. That's a little
Yeah.
tiny way. I mean,
Right. And sometimes I'll work with people on exact stuff like that because they're so attached to the money. We do little exercises like that. We give away money in small ways, and then we try to get into bigger ways, and then we start to examine, like, how did that feel? We look at what's going on internally with us during that whole process, because remember, it doesn't feel safe to our nervous system.
mm,
So we have a couple of things we have to do. One, we have to acknowledge where that came from. We have to say, okay, there was something in our past that said this, but we don't dwell a lot on that. I'm not the kind of therapist that's just like, for 3 years, we're just going to rehash everything that happened to you in the past. What we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, here's kind of where we're identifying this came from. It it then created this trauma response in us that makes us feel unsafe in certain situations around money. And for some of us, that's releasing money. So that's one of the ways that people gain wealth, was they were good at that, at not
mm-hmm,
releasing money, at not letting money just flow through
yeah,
them and, like, come in just like burning a hole in their pocket, getting out. That's how we probably got to the point that we are. So to to recognize that that process could have served you in certain ways, and then it's hampering your ability to be happy and have close relationships now. So we have to actually train the nervous system to say, could this be safe? $300, probably in the head, the person is thinking, $300 could grow into this. And, by the time my great grandchildren are going to college, it's going to pay for a lot of that. And so we have to train the nervous system to say, giving this amount away is actually a safe thing to do. That's one of the things that's missing from so much financial wellness. A lot of financial wellness is about, like, budgeting or debt, or like, okay, we need to, like, figure out how to manage things. But if we don't look at what's going on with the nervous system, if the nervous system is saying this isn't a safe activity, I don't care how many habit books you read, I don't care how many psychology books you read, until you have convinced your nervous system that you can engage in this without it like, literally life threatening. It came out of an unmet need in your childhood, that where they thought they were going to die if they did a certain thing. And it feels irrational now, but when we explore it deep enough, it's always a life-threatening occurrence. It's something, because remember, as children, if you're not loved by your tribe, again in air quotes, if you're not, like, accepted by the people who are raising you, you will die. By the biology knows that. They know that you have to be accepted in order to survive. And so we have to actually, like, do these little incremental tests, and telling your nervous system, oh wait, that didn't kill us, to give a $300 tip. Oh wait, it actually felt good to do this, and focusing on that for a while. And sometimes we'll journal about it. Like, we'll imagine what they're doing with that big tip. Or sometimes I even have them do, I love restaurants because you can be kind of anonymous. And so sometimes it's just telling the waiter, you're going to pay for, maybe there's a family sitting there, and here you are, John, with 6 kids. I'm sure that there was a time when it was difficult to take everybody out to dinner. And so, maybe you're finding somebody that looks like this could be a stretch for them. And maybe there's a special occasion going on. And you tell the waiter, we're gonna cover that person's bill. And then they don't
yeah,
know. You can be in the restaurant and they don't know who it is that covered that. I mean, and unless you're walking in all blinged out with all kinds of diamonds, and then you're bringing attention to yourself, but probably they won't be able to pick out that it's you. And you can see that joy. Sometimes it brings people to tears. So I also encourage doing it if you've got a church community, or if you're part of any kind of a philanthropic organization where you can. Uh, they've shown us that the closer that you can get to the actual experience of the person that you're helping. So, writing a check to an organization and then having them, that's important. And every wealthy person should have a very high budget for making sure that society, the vulnerable parts of society, people in society are taken care of. But then every once in a while, if you, especially if, like, let's say you help single moms, go to some place where you're seeing single moms. Volunteer in some kind of place where, if that's the place that you want it to be, or if it's people who have, children with cancer, or if it's, people with autistic children, who are, raising them all the way into adult years, or handicapped children, and be around them so that you can see and have a really good pulse on the good that your check is doing. That's what brings that really raises, in the research parlance, your happiness points. So we do that. We do that very intentionally and purposefully when we're having a hard time letting go of financial resources, in that sort of scarcity feeling of, like, what if I live to be 120? And, even though your financial advisor has shown you, look, you could spend 3 times this, you could live until you're 150 and you're still never going to run out of money. But until your nervous system believes that, it's not going to make any
Mhm.
difference.
That's the number one fear in just about every study
Hmm.
that's ever been done, is the fear of running out of money in retirement, which is exactly what we do for people. Is we make sure, to the extent possible, that they're not going to ever have to worry about
Right,
that. And
right.
I have just as many clients who have, I'll just say, a lot of financial resources that still worry about running out of money, as I do on the other side that have a lot of financial resources and don't worry about it at all. And they may ask me, hey, am I still okay? And as long as I can, as long as the
Hmm.
math still works out,
Hmm.
I tell them absolutely do and enjoy life as you want to. And that is exactly why we talk about money being a tool, not the end goal. Money is the
Hmm.
tool that we use to build our best life.
Yeah.
If I've said that once, I've said it a million times. But
Yeah.
hopefully, I'm saying it to somebody new out there and
Yeah.
they recognize that it is possible. So, to that 25-year-old that's trying to figure out how to pay their rent payment,
Hmm.
there are some techniques that we can use. There's some strategies that we can use. And that's a big difference between Guardian Rock and maybe another, like a big bank or something like that. I'll still talk to
Hmm.
those people.
Yeah.
It may not be appropriate at all for me to work full time with them, but I'll still talk to them and give them ideas and thoughts
Hmm. Hmm.
and things that they can do to move themselves ahead. We've even taken somebody who had so much in debt that they literally were just making the minimum payments, and we
Yeah.
showed them a way not to go bankrupt, not to do the things that you see, get the phone calls for, hey, we'll
Mm-hmm.
do a debt
Mm-hmm.
workout for you, because
Yeah.
those are not necessarily great ideas, by the way. We showed them a way to slowly, and it was just a technique. It was
Yeah.
just a technique, a small little adjustment, and they began to slowly. Now, it does take time, how to
Hmm.
slowly climb out of that and then move ahead. And
Hmm.
once you, again, a lot of it has to do with mindset. Is you feel like it's not possible, but very often it is possible.
Hmm. Hmm. And when people, if they go to my website, and you probably saw this, I have a 7-layer financial wellness framework, which helps us diminish shame around money by identifying all of the major factors, the broad factors and the deeper factors that impact our relationship with money, our behavior with money. And what you're talking about is at an educational and behavioral level. And there's a couple of levels above that, the relational, so what's going on in our families, our workplaces, and then the societal level, all of those messages, the just the system and the way that it distributes opportunity and privilege. And then below behavioral is the psychological, the physiological, and the neurological. And so sometimes, and you're telling me that you're, like, actually kind of holding their hand, and that's actually probably um, creating a sense of safety in them, that somebody cares enough to say, here's how you do it, and it matters to me. that you dig yourself out of this in a healthy way and that you don't get into further trouble. That may be actually healing part of the wound of, some kind of an unmet need of doing that. But that's originating down there in that psychological level, why they weren't able to do it, probably why they got into the big debt in the first place.
Mhm.
There's lots of layers, including the societal message that consumption is the way to deal with all of your pain and get away from it. Of course, that's a big one.
Mhm.
So I love thinking about how your technique is doing a couple of things. It's giving them an education so that they're like, oh, I didn't even know that was possible, just mathematically, like, just make a little bit over on one payment until this, and then, slide roll it or snowball it, however you want to do it. And then the behavioral side of like walking beside them, also the psychological side of showing them your needs matter to someone, which may be a big hole that nobody had filled before.
Yeah. And that's I'm so glad that you're doing this. And this brings me to a point too where I want to make absolutely sure that people know how to get a hold of you. We'll have it down in the show notes for sure. But in case they're in the car, what is the best way to get in touch with you so that if they just want to have a conversation, see if
Yeah.
maybe this is something that's right for them, how would they best get in touch with you?
So if you just go to our website, that's the one place I can just everybody, my calendar is right on there, and I give everybody a 20-minute free financial wellness conversation. You'll walk away with at least one actionable item, actionable step that you can take out of that conversation. And of course, I'm going to talk with you about ways that we could work on a deeper level. That might get to the roots of things, but that's the way to just like, oh, maybe have a little aha moment with a free call with Jen, and then talk about ways to, and if it is an educational thing, I point you in the direction of, different resources. I work right alongside with any CFPs. I'm not in competition with the CFP industry because they're not, that this isn't what they were trained for. This is why I left the practice of CFP work, was because I saw that my training didn't prepare me for these kinds of issues. So often, even after all of the education that we would get, we'd give them, you know, all kinds of PDFs and webinars saying, the market is going to go up and it's going to go down, and you should expect that. It's going to, no matter who's in office, no matter what happens with this election cycle or this, whatever geopolitical situation we're facing, the market will rebound. It always has, it always will. We don't know how deep, a trough will be. We don't know how long it will be, but we know that there will be a way to come back. And so we make our investment decisions and our asset allocation decisions based on what the plan dictates, not what is happening in the headlines. But we say that over and over again. And then when there's a major market downturn, what happens? We still get all these, phone calls and emails. Oh no, is this going to affect my plan? Blah, blah, blah. And so this is where I felt like, okay, the psychology of it, if you want to pass that on to somebody with my kind of credentials, a certified financial therapist, the trauma of money, the psychology plus all the experience, so that they are calling you less, that's going to even open up the ability to take on more clients. If you don't have to give people so much attention because they're again, dealing with these deeper issues. But anyway, certified financial planner, certified financial therapist. So my website is Breakthrough Financial Wellness. If you go in there I think you just scroll down and it shows you my calendar. You just click on it and schedule an appointment with me. My email address is jennifer.edwards at BT, like breakthrough, financialwellness.com. So just, yeah, get on a call with me. Let's just talk about what's going on for you. No obligation to do that. And maybe you'll just get a perspective. And if it puts you down the rabbit hole of like, I'm going to do some trauma training, and great. If you can heal that, however you're going to heal that, most people find that they need a guide, at least some person that's going to show you what to focus on next, so you're not just kind of spinning your wheels. But and especially when it comes to relationships, we don't do that super well ourselves because we're in it. We're kind of in the muck. So it's really hard to see objectively what's going on inside of the relationship. So if you're thinking about this, if you're listening to this, listening this far in, this is probably something that the universe or whatever God, your higher self is trying to tell you time to focus on.
And again, I'm going to speak to some people out there because I know there are some out there that if you think everything is fine and everything is going on splendidly, not everybody in your family may think so. And maybe
Yeah.
you should be the bigger person, the leader in the group, the leader that maybe you think you are, and maybe contact Jennifer and say, hey, what am I missing in
Yeah.
order that my family can live their best life? And
Yeah.
just for a minute, consider the idea that you may have missed something along your life's journey. Maybe it's
Hmm.
possible you are not always 100% correct and not 100% always 100% competent in your when it's not your zone of genius. I talk
Yeah.
to people about this a lot, and if I have learned nothing else, is I'm really bad at a lot of stuff.
Well,
and
good for
stuff.
you, John, to be able to
Yes.
acknowledge that because that's, and when that's one of the things when I do my surveys or I'm speaking at an event, that's the other thing I do is I'll speak to your organization. I'll come in and we tailor the message to whoever your audience is. But I'll say, who of you has a financial issue? And about most people, about 75% will raise their hand. And I'll give some examples of like, financial, what I call financial hangups. And the rest of the people, I say, now, if I
You're
were to
lying.
bring your spouse in here and ask them what your financial hangup is, do you think that they would come up with something? And then the rest of the hands go up because they're like, yeah, my wife complains that I'm stingy or I can't seem to, let go of this issue or I'm too secretive or I'm constantly checking with our financial advisor to see if we're okay. It's like let go of some of that and spend some more time having those important conversations before the end of your life, which, none of us are going to take it with us. That's the thing. We're going to take our connections, our relationships, the lessons that we've learned. The legacy is not going to be the 30 million. The legacy is going to be what you did with your time and your money. So your resources. How did you use your resources? That's what people will say. That was what was really important to that person.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Jennifer, thanks so much for being on the podcast. I think this is it was something that we so need to talk about and so need to maybe give you a call and get on the website and check out your resources because again, living your best life, it is just no fun living with assumptions that maybe are or are not true and having relationships that are broken without admitting that they're being broken or it being very obvious that they're broken. It's
Yeah.
just not worth it. Money is, again, simply a tool. And when placed in the hands of somebody who's doing things the right way, it can make something beautiful as opposed to
Hugely
being a
impactful.
mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you
Yeah.
very much. Those of you who are normal listeners and listen every week, thank you very much. Make sure and hit the like button down there. It does help. This is John Browning of Guardian Rock Wealth. You can reach me at guardianrockwealth.com or you can text the word life to 321-421-5213. We will not spam you with a bunch of texts. We'll send you a text with lots of links to free information and education. So again, Jennifer, thanks so much for being with us, and we'll talk to everyone later.